Uncovering your emotional roots to physical pain. I think this is probably one of my most passionate topics that I ever speak about. In fact, I'm that passionate about it. I wrote a book on pain a number of years ago. In fact, was it now 4 years ago? And this evening, what I want to do is I would like to journey through some steps to talk about physical pain, emotional pain, and when sometimes you start to experience symptoms, maybe it is consistent anxiety, perhaps it's like aches and pains in your neck and shoulders, perhaps it's like tension headaches, and they just seemingly come out of nowhere, and no matter what you do, it doesn't seem to get any better. Well, if that's you, then this live is definitely for you. So as you arrive, whether you're watching this live now or on a replay, then don't forget to say hi. And if it is a replay, you can give me a hashtag replay once this goes out. And just give me an emoji. Let me know that you're here and you're watching. And I'm going to do this slightly different this evening. I'm actually going to do this little live training as a question and answers. I have the questions which I'm using based on the most common questions I get asked around physical pain, around emotional pain, and around what the heck you do to get rid of it. So without further ado, tonight is all about deep diving into some of the secrets that I've been exposed to in my career from working with some of the most phenomenal, unquestionably most insanely amazing human beings around the planet that have taught me some incredible tools, from Dr. John Sarno's teachings, he's a doctor that sadly has passed away, but he was still alive when I did his teachings. He was an amazing, incredible man, Western doctor who realised I say early on in his career, it wasn't that early really, but he really recognised as he went through his career that perhaps he'd got it wrong, and that when people were coming to him with physical pain or anxiety, mental health issues, that very much so in the West we've been trained to really just look at the physical symptoms, and of course they are important, they definitely are, but there's so much more to what makes you and I up, and the most important part that makes us up is often just missed out, which is the mind. And he did lots of research into the connection between the mind-body connection and why sometimes we get these aches and pains or these dramatic experiences of feeling really out of sorts, and seemingly there is no reason. Like you haven't fallen and that's why your neck and back's gone. There's not actually anything that dramatic going on in your life, but you feel flat or you feel anxious. And he wanted to get to the bottom of it. And so consequently, he taught and did a lot of research and studies into the mind-body connection and what we do when we have traumatic events. And this training that I did well over a decade ago, I trained to be a SERPA practitioner, which is basically all about how we suppress trauma and how that then starts to manifest in the body, is huge. And unfortunately, in the West, if you go to a doctor, doctors are trained in an area, but mainly it's the physical part. And as much as they're brilliant and amazing, and not all doctors, so some doctors go off and do their own training and as well, but a lot of them, if you go to them with back pain, if you go to them with neck or shoulder pain, if you go to them with constant anxiety, they will literally try and fix your symptom. But actually, often it's not the symptom that needs fixing, because the symptom is the end result of something completely different, which leads me nicely into my first question of this Q&A training on pain. So one of the most popular questions I get asked is, why is it and what is this pain that we experience? How come I'm consistently going crazy in my head over something that's quite obviously physical, and yet I can't seem to work out why it's there. Well, through my studies, I came across this word, okay, which is called psychogenic pain. Psychogenic basically means so sometimes people will say, oh, it's in your head, it's not real. No, it is real. When you feel physical pain, it is real. There's no doubt about it. You're not going crazy, you're not going mad. But psychogenic pain basically means that the physical experience you're having is not physically triggered. So it's physical in the end. And yes, when you go, oh my God, my back's gone, ow, I can't move. Oh my gosh, I just can't move. That is absolutely physical, right? But the reason why it's there in the first place didn't start off as physical. Oh, and you're jumping on. Hi. Hello, Ellie. Hello, Nicola. Hello, Rachel. Nice to see you all. Give me some high fives. So this word, which you may not have heard of before, this psychogenic pain, basically means that your symptom, so your consistent anxiety or your physical pain in your neck and shoulders that you can't get rid of, has come from something non-physical. So what is that? Right, well, let me just tell you a little story. When I first got into this world of mind-body connection, I'd just finished training with the Shy monks, and I was completely and utterly obsessed with like how I was starting to realise that everything that was objectively happening, whether that's in body or in my life, was literally like a reflection of my unconscious mind. And I started to realise that everything that shows up in the body, from even as like putting on extra pounds of weight and not being able to shift it, to a pain or an ache or a tension headache, all of it was reflecting some unease in my own unconscious mind. And that unease was unprocessed, basically emotion that's been triggered from an experience in the past that generally has been very intense and stressful. We might call this trauma, but trauma is wide and far. And often when I say the word trauma, I have to be really careful, because people assume that trauma means that you've been abused, or you've had a really unhealthy divorce, or you've had a tragic loss in your family. Yes, that is traumatic, but trauma also can be at a whole other end of the spectrum, which might be that you've had a fallout with somebody at work and you feel rejected and you don't feel seen, and you don't feel comfortable going into your office anymore. That is traumatic also, right? So psychogenic trauma basically means that psychogenic pain basically means that it's something that's been unprocessed, unfinished from a non-physical experience. So a physical experience is traumatic. Trauma from a physical experience is you have fallen over and snapped a bone in your body. That is physical trauma, right? Non-physical trauma, so psychogenic trauma or pain, comes from a traumatic experience that's emotionally traumatic. So, for example, you have a really bad fallout with a group of friends that have been in your life forever, totally misunderstood. You feel so sad and so upset that you feel this intense emotion that stems from anger to feeling guilty to feeling shameful to also an array of negative emotions. Okay, that is what we call psychogenic pain, right? Because it's not physical. You haven't snapped a bone and experienced trauma. You have experienced an event and felt traumatized. Okay. So when I got into this world of working with people with an array of different ailments, it was absolutely mind-blowing when I started working with some of the physical different things that people were having. So I have literally worked with people from migraines to fibromyalgia. If you're not sure what fibromyalgia is, it's called an invisible illness because you can't see it, but it feels like people feel like they've got there's such pain rushing through their nervous system. It's really debilitating, and it's really quite awful, and most people have a belief that fibromyalgia is non-curable, but trust me, I work with many people with fibromyalgia and they're totally fine now. It is, you can sort it, but you have to work with the root cause of it. Two things like neck pain, people's backs going. In fact, just last week a client got in touch with me whose back had gone, and I'll tell you more about that because this is very, very relevant to lots of us, including myself. My back's gone in the past, and anyway, to cut this story short, we basically worked together for an hour, and within an hour she went from a 9 out of 10 back to a 1 out of 10 within 2 days, 3 days she was back at the gym. So what I'm saying is that this physical pain that people experience, these illnesses, these things that make us feel like, oh my god, there's something really drastically wrong, are totally and utterly sortable. And when I started working with people 10 years ago, I mainly worked with people with fibromyalgia, and it was a massive journey, huge journey, because I was up against a lot of negativity from the world, because there is as I said before, a belief that it's non-curable, but yet I was getting these amazing results. And believe it or not, people were kicking back from that. Not the people that were getting the results, I have to say. They were very pleased that they got their lives back. But people that have been programmed or told that, you've got this illness and that's it, deal with it because this is non-curable, had bought so heavily into the belief that when they saw people like me being able to work with people to get results, it actually triggered them rather than wanting to reach out. But that's just people's journeys, and that's a whole other life, I'm afraid. So yeah, working with fibromyalgia, and then I kind of worked with a lot of back pain, because a lot of people with physical back pain. I've worked with a lot of neck and shoulder pain, migraines, and I've also worked with quite a lot of gastral stuff. So like people that suffer with heartburn or stomach issues, things like that. All of it stems from psychogenic pain. All of it. And one of the questions I often get asked is, so what are the array of physical symptoms that you can have that potentially have come from this unprocessed past trauma that's causing the physical pain in the first place? And the ones I've just listed, plus constant anxiety, consistent depression, things like that, are all psychogenic originated. They all come from the fact that we've got this unprocessed trauma that is suppressed in the unconscious mind, that is literally triggering the physical pain, literally triggering your anxiety and stress. So this is good news, and I'm saying this because when you realise what the reason is, you can go and sort it. The biggest problem that people mainly have is that they have these conditions and they don't know what the reasoning is and why they've got it. So therefore, they tend to start fighting the symptom rather than trying to address the reason why it was there in the first place. So what's another question that I often get asked? I get asked what type of symptoms you get, what psychogenics is. So I've answered those two things are. And I also get asked, what's I've got here, what's common time, blah, blah, blah. Can you give an example of some suppressed emotions that can lead to psychogenic pain? Right, okay, yes. So the other question I get is, what is suppressed emotions? Right, let me give you an example. So let's say when you were younger, your parents split up, okay? And for some of you that will be a fact. Mine did, but I wasn't so young. But anyway, your parents split up, and even though they had some issues going on, it's still your parents and you still love both of them. You are then made to choose who you go and live with, but instantly as a child, this brings up total guilt for the other parent, feeling that they might not feel like they're not loved from you anymore, or feeling like they're not going to be okay because you're not with them 24/7, worrying about your parent. So in that moment, you create some emotion which is negative. But because you're so young And because you've never been taught what to do with this experience that you're going through, like most of us, you muddle through. So you muddle through and you get on with life. Meanwhile, you've got this floating negative, unprocessed emotion that's attached to that event, right? So what happens to it? Well, there's only one thing that can happen to it. It has to go somewhere where it will be stored. So it gets suppressed, which means it gets pushed down into that part of your mind called the unconscious mind, where it's put into a small box, a lid's popped on it, and it's just left there for a rainy day. Well, you could say, or you could even argue that actually that's kind of a really good thing, because it's meant that you can then get on with your life. And basically that is part of the reasoning why our system is set up like this. It's survival. It's because in the moment we don't have the tools, we don't have the know-how, so it's popped away in a box in our unconscious mind so we can literally get on with our lives. And quite frankly, that's kind of important, right? So we carry on and we get on with our lives. And then we maybe grow up a little bit further, and then something else happens. Maybe we've been told off at school for getting our assignment in late, and we felt embarrassed. Perhaps we got dumped by a boyfriend or a girlfriend and we felt rejected. Maybe we failed an exam and felt like a failure. Perhaps we were reprimanded for something that wasn't actually our fault and we felt an injustice. Maybe we just got rejected from the sports team that we so wanted to be part of, and now we feel like we're not enough. All these experiences are varied and wide, and all of them are creating consistent trauma, if you like, in our lives that we don't process. So we keep popping it down, and this builds up, right? It builds up. Naturally, as an adult, as we start to grow up, what happens is this pressure cooker, this box of tricks, if you like, that's been suppressed, it's been pushed into our unconscious mind, sits there bubbling away, ready to explode. So a suppressed emotion is the hangover, if you like, from an experience that we've had in the past where we've never been able to complete the full process. Not because we're bad people, not because our family or parents around us are bad parents, but because we didn't know. We didn't know what to do with it, and we didn't know how to be able to move through it because no one's ever taught us, and we didn't even really know at the time that there was something to work through. So we just got on with it. Then we grew up into an adult, and suddenly we started to get these weird symptoms out of nowhere. And it seemed like one day you woke up and it was just there. Like, oh my gosh, why have I got these intrusive thoughts all the time? And instantly we believe it's because there's something wrong with us. We're broken. If I could get £1 for every person that tells me that they're broken, I would be a very rich lady. Anyways, so we identify with the fact that we've suddenly started to get these obscure symptoms. Maybe you're someone that's just constantly got a pain in your hip. And it's like, what is this pain? I've been for scans. I've had blood tests. I've had this, that, and everything comes back clear. Perhaps you're that person that is not able to seemingly digest things properly. It feels like it's always stuck here, that you can't get your food properly down. And you've been for tests, and you've been for this and that, and blah, blah, blah. Totally clear. Maybe you're that person that has had backache now for longer than you'd like to even consider. Yes, some days it's more manageable than others. Some days it's quite bearable, in fact, and other days it is excruciating. And yet you can't really work out why some days it's okay and some days it's not. But again, you've been for scans, you've been to see every specialist you could possibly find, you've spent fortunes, you've bought different mattresses, you've bought different beds, you've slept in different positions, pillows, you name it, you've bought it, and it's done diddly dot. It's changed nothing. Well, I can tell you now, to stop that madness kicking in, is because it's never been about the the physical pain. And one of the best things you can learn from this actually is if you get symptoms, sometimes it's physical pain and sometimes it's just a symptom that come and go. So they come and go in severity. So sometimes they're really intense and really like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10. And other times they're only a 1, 2 or 3. Then 100% I can tell you, if your symptoms change in their severity from day to day, week to week, month to month, it is 100% emotionally triggered. 100%. It's not physical. It is coming from your unconscious mind, and this is coming up and poking you almost from the inside to say, will you just listen to me? I need you to process this unprocessed stuff from our past so that I can return us back into your natural state, which is of homeostasis, which is to be in alignment with your best version. But I can't do it until you listen and you just get a grip on this and you actually allow yourself to process it. That's essentially, if it could speak, that's what it'd be saying to you. So the first thing to identify is to ask yourself is, does the severity of my symptoms, so if it's anxiety, then does it come and go in waves? Like, am I sometimes a 2 out of 10 and then other days I'm a 9 out of 10? Or your back pain, sometimes it can be 3 days at a 9 out of 10 and suddenly it seems all right for a day and then boom, it's back again. If that's you, it means you are emotionally triggered. It is 100% because of what's going on in your unconscious mind. So what's the next question I get asked? I also get asked, what is that question? I also get asked, as I just said, one of the things that you have to do is you have to address and process the stuck negative emotion in the unconscious mind. And once you process it, what happens, you finish and complete the cycle, then it then basically disappears. And as that disappears, guess what else disappears? Yep, your symptoms. But some people often say, but that sounds like a lot of hard work. And I am not going to sugarcoat this. This is not a quick fix, but this is a way of being. So when I learned this stuff years ago, and I used this on my panic attacks and anxiety, I've been pretty lucky physically, I have to say. It never got to me physically, really. My back's definitely gone a few times when I've bought into things, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But mine's really mainly been mental stuff, intrusive thoughts, panic attacks, anxiety. That was kind of my Achilles heel, if you like. So I haven't really suffered with like aching hips and consistent pain in my back and stuff, but my back has gone. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because we've all got our own Achilles heels, and no matter what it is, it's still debilitating. And when I started implementing this into my life back then, over 10 years ago, way over 10 years ago, I saw a huge shift in my experience, in my mental state very quickly. But I am going to be very, very honest. That didn't mean as soon as I got the results, I put it all down and then forgot about it for the rest of my life. I have consistently lived in a certain way ever since. I don't mean like I've had to like move house or, I don't know, drink green juice upside down and I don't know. I've just had to do things every single day that help me align myself so that my internal part, so my inner work, my soul, my unconscious mind are consistently looked after. And it doesn't take a lot. It takes a few minutes a day, but it does take you being consciously aware that you do have some way of living, some way of consistently being. And because I do that, I haven't had an anxiety attack for over a decade now. Like, it's been a long time, and I've still had shit, if you like, show up in my life because I'm human and it still does. but I don't go there anymore because I've got the tools. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because it's possible, because if I can do it, then anybody can, trust me. So yes, is it a quick fix? No. Is it difficult? 100% not, but it is different. It is different. This is different, and this is where people struggle. Everything I teach is not difficult. In fact, it's really obvious and very simplistic. But because the mind, the egoic mind, is pessimistic by nature, and it absolutely loves to live in a repetitive way. So it loves habits. It loves doing the same thing as what you did yesterday and the day before. That's what it loves. And it loves that because it believes that keeps you safe, even though sometimes some of the things that we do habitually are not actually serving us. So some of the ways that we treat ourselves, maybe our inner critic, for example, listening to it, maybe we've got bad habits that don't really serve us, and we know that they don't, but we keep doing them. The mind loves to keep you in your comfort zone, and that is because it believes it can then keep you alive. So it's not bad, it's doing its job, but the reality is that what we've been doing clearly doesn't work. Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting the symptoms we're getting. And so it's time to do something different. As Einstein said, the definition of insanity is repeating the same behaviour and expecting a different result. I love that quote because it's so... that was me for so long, doing the same thing every day. I was like literally banging my head off a brick wall every day and going, I don't get it. Why is this not working for me? I'd have a full-on like meltdown Paddy. And it was because I was repeating the same habitual habits that were not serving me. But at that point, I couldn't see beyond it. So will you have to do something different? Yes, you will. Will it be difficult? No. Will it be easy to slip back into old ways? Yes, it will. Let's admit we've got a question here. So have had them for 19 years, Henry said. Oh, I don't know for the top bit. Henry, what have you had for 19 years? Let me know. I can't see unless I've missed it. Natalie's put, I've had several health anxieties and I only have to think I have an ache. Right, well, Nicola, right, this is really common, so I'm just going to bring this up. The health anxiety, you are not on your own. So health anxiety is an interesting one. So health anxiety is usually born. So when you come to planet Earth, you don't arrive here with health anxiety. Something has had to happen to create that trigger in your unconscious mind. Now, not in all cases, but usually there's been something while you've been growing up, whether you've witnessed someone being very poorly around you, perhaps a loved one. Sometimes it can be that you've had to be a carer at a very young age. Sometimes you can just might have just been happened to be at a scene somewhere where someone's just passed away, and that's frightened you. Other times it can be that you've been poorly yourself, and yes, you've been fine and you've got over it, but then there's a concern and worry that it's going to come back. So yeah, lost my mum and brother suddenly. Right, there you go. Well, I am utterly sorry for that, Nicola. And I can guarantee that that's where this health anxiety is triggered from. So what will have happened is this, so you know that you're not going mad. In that experience, there is obviously going to be intense emotion, and you will have been doing the best you can with the tools you've got to be able to just live day to day back then, I'm sure. And you've done a great job because you got to where you are today. But in that process back then, while you're muddling through there, all that energy, all that emotion, that probably concoction, and that's speaking to you one-to-one, I don't know, but probably a concoction of maybe shame and guilt and anger. Anger's often the big one when we lose people suddenly, quite understandably. A sense of loss of identity, all this energy, all this emotion, all there intensified. And all you'll be able to do is just try and muddle through. So all that energy, that'll have been popped down so that you can get through that period of time. It'll have been suppressed into your unconscious mind. You've then grown up a few years on, or however long, and now every time that there's something around health, whether you read it, hear it, see it, whichever sense is triggered, and you'll probably have some that are worse than others. You might be more of somebody, when you read something, it triggers you more. You might be somebody who, when you hear people talk about things, it triggers you. You might be a combination. What happens, if you imagine, is every time you read something, that them emotions start to rise. They start to arise, and almost the feelings of those emotions, because we're chemical beings, right? We are chemistry. We are consistently producing chemicals. So you then read something, it triggers that chemistry within you. You now start to feel these old emotions from when your mum and your brother passed, and instantly that then triggers a whole array of thoughts that are at the same vibrational level of the feeling you're experiencing. And so if that feeling is fear, if it's anger, if it's shame, if it's whatever it is, your thoughts will be of the same vibrational state, which probably sounds something like, well, I've got this on my knee, that obviously means I'm going to die also. Or, even though I've only sneezed once, it probably means that I've got pneumonia. I'm being extreme, but that's because that's what the mind does. So the number one thing to do, Nicola, yeah, give me a thumbs up. The number one thing to do is you've got to address this old unprocessed emotion which was born back when your mum and you lost your mum and your brother. And it's honestly not difficult, and it's not as hard as you imagine, and sometimes it's not even emotional. Everyone thinks that you've got to have like some sort of meltdown and breakdown to be able to revisit, but actually you're not revisiting the story, you're revisiting the energy, the emotion. And what you've got to remember, right, is an emotion. If you look at what an emotion is, an emotion, if you split it up, motion is energy in motion. All emotion is movement. It's movement. That's it. And what happens is, if this is the emotion, right, it's trying to move, but it's stuck in your mind at the moment. It's stuck, and then it tries to come up, and then and you go like this, and you push it down again. You do that automatically because you do it to survive. So it comes up, and then you go, "Oh, I don't think so," and you push it down, right? So if this is just energy, right, emotion, energy, emotion, all it's trying to do is actually get out. That's all it's trying to do. But because we panic when we start to feel these feelings again because they don't feel good, we go, "Oh, I don't think so," and we shove it back down again, right? So it gets trapped, it gets stuck, basically. And all it wants to do is it wants to leave. It wants to just go. Because energy, if you think about it, energy is neutral. It's not good, it's not bad. It only becomes something to us when we wrap a label around it, like shame or anger or fear. And now we've got a narrative. And it's because we associate those emotions with being bad. And mostly because that's what we've been taught. And most of us have had some sort of experience growing up where perhaps like maybe you were at school and you showed anger and you got reprimanded. You were told to go and sit in the corner, or maybe you were given a detention, or perhaps your parents were told. And so you learned very quickly like, oh, I mustn't show this anger because if I do, I will be reprimanded, and that means that I might be rejected. And if I get rejected as a human being, how will I survive? Now, I'm talking very primal here, but I'm sure you can understand what I'm saying. And so what we learn is to not show it. We learn, but actually, it's just simply not true. All emotion is not good and not bad because it's just energy in motion. That's it. We've made it bad because... Oh, sorry about that. I got cut off. I'm back again. Yeah, so energy in motion. So all this is energy trying to move out of your unconscious mind, right? That's it. So when we change our relationship to what's actually gone on, we change our relationship to, so we suppressed that back when we had this awful experience. We've never processed it because we've never known how to, but also because we feel like it will be scary, bad, and we've learned at a young age that if we start to feel, let's say that's anger, and we let anybody else see that we're angry, we run into the small chance that we might not be accepted. I'm going to shut this door for a sec. And we can't afford to do that, because if we do that, then that's it. Life will be over. But actually, the reality is that this energy emotion, this emotion that's been stuck in our unconscious mind, as soon as we allow ourselves to experience it, to allow ourselves to accept it, it then dissipates. It rises and it goes. And as soon as that starts to go, guess what else starts to go? Your symptoms. So your anxiety, your health anxiety start to dissipate, your poor sleep, low energy, fatigue, whatever it may be, they start to go too. It's so fascinating, because I don't know anybody who hasn't suppressed any emotion. I don't know. I've never met anybody, no one, that hasn't done it. We've all done it, because all of us, no matter who you are, even the Queen, has gone through some sort of trauma where our natural ability to survive it is to suppress it. And the only difference is that those that get to live their best life just learn this stuff, and they allow themselves to be freed. They allow themselves to work through it, let it go, and honour themselves to live their best version. Because you know what? We're here to thrive. We're not here to survive. But so many people are surviving life day in, day out, because they don't realise that they're being dictated to by past trauma that's stuck in their unconscious mind, that they've never had the ability or chance to process. And it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. And the next thing, people start to create all sorts of symptoms in their life. So it starts with, anxieties and things like that. And then, sometimes it ends up in physical or emotional pain. And eventually dis-ease. I mean, all a disease is a dis-ease within ourselves. There's a disconnection with something we've not dealt with. That's it. So I hope that helps. And I've got a book called Break Free from Pain, which I will put the link to after I post this live. And it's got a full process in there if you want to work through it. And of course, if you want more than that, then just DM me, Nicola, because this is what I do. So if you want to, talk about working and doing something one-to-one or in a group, then just message me. But the book's a brilliant starting point, and it gives you the full process that I use with my clients, which is called the Freedomalignment method, which is basically where I address the root cause, which is this cybernetics within the unconscious mind, and the whole process is there in the book. So you can work at that, and it's on Amazon, but I'll put the link in afterwards. So, pain, friend or foe. So, for me, any kind of discomfort, any kind of pain, for me these days, just is like someone knocking on my door. It's like someone trying to get my attention to say there's some work to do here, and that's it. And when things happen, because even though I do this as a job, I still slip up sometimes. And a few years ago, I remember my back going suddenly. And as soon as it went, I went, I know what's happened. And it's interesting because whenever anything happens, I always now look at it and read it in a totally different way. I look at it as though the mind's trying to communicate to me. And part and parcel of my journey took me to understanding, and I guess it's a bit more like Chinese medicine really, but every part of the body represents a different emotional cause. So I know that if there's something going on in the lower back, for example, someone's lower back goes, that it's related to either stressing about finances or worrying about something to do with their family. I know that if someone's neck's gone, or they've got a pain in the neck. It's like literally like they've got a pain in the neck. It's like they're not trusting, and either not trusting themselves or someone else, and they, whatever that is, feels like they're being a pain in the neck in their lives. Shoulders, weight of the world on the shoulders. You've heard that before. Responsibility, shoulders every time. And any of my clients are like, my shoulders, I can't move, I can't sleep. I'm like, what responsibilities have you taken on? Let's have a look. So every part of the body represents a totally different emotional cause. And in my book, in fact, it looks like this. In my book, I've got a section which is, you can, so let's say you've got something going on, I don't know, in your knee. You can look it up, and then you can look for what the emotional trigger is, which is quite handy. So there's the Freedom Alignment method in here, and there's like that section which is the metaphysical anatomy, I call it. So it's where we look up the part of the body, and then we can see what emotional triggers have gone on with that, and then you can do the process which is in the book to be able to relieve that. So pain is, I personally, and people that are in physical pain for a long time are probably going to kill me when they hear this, but it is, I'm afraid, the only way to get your attention to say there's something you need to do, there's some work here. So please listen and do something different, because pain, chronic pain, we're not meant to live with chronic pain. We're not meant to. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over years. And it's because we've not listened to what our body's trying to get our attention to. And even if we are listening, the next step is we must action. Healing happens at not on the surface level of the mind, but at the unconscious part of the mind. And it's always experiential. You will never heal through just chatting. You have to do a process. There has to be a process where you're experiencing what it is that you need to let go of. And only then will you heal. And I've got so many testimonials that I'd be here for a week and a half to sharing them with you. But what I might do this next week is just put a few different ones up, some of my case studies up. I'll do a few of next week on Facebook. I'll do a few posts to share, because honestly, it is unbelievable the results from some of these people's lives. It blows me away every time. Even though I know this stuff, I'm always like, oh my God, this is like so good. And I want to share them because I don't want you to suffer any longer, right? I want you to be able to take heed of this and make that change. And if you feel like you want more of a hand-holding experience through all this, then I teach all of this in my Mind Freedom membership, which is a monthly subscription with videos, with Q&A session once a month. In fact, after this call, I'm straight onto a Zoom with my members. It's also a monthly live meditation, because one of my hats is I'm a meditation teacher, where we address different root stresses each time. So you're learning to be able to really go inwards and heal. And there's also a weekly step-by-step guide online for you to follow to be able to because it's not about, I always say, you don't give somebody some fish to eat. You give them a fishing rod so that they can then fish for themselves and survive, right? And that's the same with this process. I can do everything, but the main thing about this is about continuing to live like this is after we've finished working together. So the membership is brilliant for that, and obviously there's like a community, and there's a Q&A, and there's also the ability for you to reach out to me Monday to Friday 9 till 5 as many times as you like when you're struggling, which is massive, because if you are, then you need support. It is such a long time to have to wait 2 weeks before speaking to me in one of the sessions again. But if you can just send a message, I can reply, and usually I reply within 1 to 2 hours, then you can almost in real time make changes, which is huge. So chronic pain, emotional pain, all of it is there to get our attention. All of it is to go, there's something that I need to address, and all of it points back in doing something in the unconscious mind. And the final question that I got asked is, are there any self-care tips that people can use to manage their pain? Yes, 100%. So there's surface level tips that will get you through, and then there's healing tips. And the healing tips I've kind of already mentioned is about either picking a copy of my book up or joining the membership and actually doing the process with the Freedom Alignment method where we address the root cause and we go dive deep into your unconscious mind. But you can do things on a day-to-day basis to be able to support the way you feel. And every single day I have daily rituals that I do to be able to support my own journey. And they look like meditation. I do cold water immersion, so I do cold showers every day. I think there's a video on my YouTube channel if you want to learn more about that. I also do intentionally every single morning set an intention for my day. Now that doesn't mean to say that I don't have stuff come up, because I do, because I'm human, but I don't grab it and wallow in stuff like I once did. I'm okay with recognizing that sometimes things arrive in my life, and if I'm triggered by it, then there's something that I need to grow and learn and let go of, and therefore I see it as a gift rather than a catastrophe. And that's a great way to live, because it means that even though circumstances are unpredictable, which they are, we can never guarantee the circumstance, nobody can. It means that I have no control of that, and I get it and I surrender to that, but I have total control over the meaning I give stuff, and so do you. And by doing that, it means that I bypass chemically destroying my nervous system with a stress hormone every time that something unpredictable happens. And you can live like that too with the right tools. So yes, meditation, yes, cold water immersion, and yes, setting a positive intention. They're just three of the most simplest first steps that you can do every single day that will help you. And again, if you need more support on that, there's some freebies on my YouTube channel and stuff on my Instagram, but you can I teach all this in the membership site.